Howdy, folk. It's been a while. Have a rare afternoon to myself. I wanted to talk about religion, spirituality in general, some of the observations I've been making, and some critiques of some things I'm more and more dissatisfied with. Now, before I start, don't think of me as the schoolmaster coming around with my ruler rapping everyone's knuckles. That's not the point of this. I understand that compulsion in anything is more likely going to breed resentment than any sort of positive change. So that I completely appreciate that. That doesn't go over my head, and that's not the point of this. I can only speak from my perspective, what I've been dissatisfied with, and what I see as worthy of critique. So, with that in mind, I'd like to start off by saying I'm getting pretty fed up with this sort of fan club attitude in paganism, and obviously, I can't paint everyone in this brush. Of course, there's all sorts of perspectives that you'll get if you spend any time in the sphere. But I put it that way. I'm defining that by a couple key attitudes that I've noticed, and I'll summarize it like this. One, that any true pagan wouldn't give a shit what anyone claiming to be a priest would say. A true pagan would understand that that any priest is a pencil neck little dick who's trying to grub you out of your money, and no true pagan follows any priest. Number two, there's nothing approaching taboos, serious taboos in pre-Christian European, Indo-European, Hyperborean cultures. Those are some big ones right there. There's nothing approaching punishment in the afterlife for deeds in this realm. I might think of some more as I go along, but those are some pretty big ones. Pretty big lies, honestly. It's pretty damn clear if you spend any time with any of the sources that we have. Read the accounts in Saxo Grammatica, and of course, there's always caveats that you have to give. There are perspectives and lenses that are hostile in some of these writings to the ancestral faith that we're looking at. Well, that's fair, but you can't throw it all. You can't throw it all out. If you have accounts over and over again of priest-like figures, the Druids, the damn it, what was their name? Slavic priests, priestesses. Anyways, the philosophers in Rome, the wizards in the Finno-Ugric traditions. I mean, and there's always cultural particularities, right? There's always subtle accents and differences. I appreciate that. At the same time, I understand there's a lot of baggage with the term priest. Now, I'm willing to have these conversations. I might not be the best term, spiritual leader, if that's better. But at the same time, this is just universal. That's just bullshit to say that our ancestors had no appreciation of hierarchy and had no appreciation of men and women who truly were spiritual leaders. Like when you read accounts of the cult of Perun, the cult of Makosh, the priests of Apollo, the Gothi of Oven, the, what do you think they're saying? I mean, no, what they really mean by priest is a voluntary fan club. These are just fans. There's no serious commitment here. What the hell do you think they were doing? I mean, you see this, the Druids. There was an account from, uh, I think it was Julius Caesar in his time, his campaign, his genocidal campaign in Gaul, where he's describing how the Druids trained for 20, something like 20 years to obtain the knowledge that they need to be able to pass it on. I mean, these people took this sphere of society very seriously. That's not to say that automatically every spiritual leader or priest-like figure was genuine and was a benefit to the tribe. I'm not saying that, but there were many who were, and it wouldn't be a feature, a facet in our cultures if there was nothing behind it, if there was nothing natural behind it. I just find that absurd. I mean, again, what the hell do you think they were doing? When it says in the Iliad, for example, the priests of Apollo uh, performed libations and sacrifice to great Apollo, raising their hands to heaven, and and they carried out these sacrifices, or to Zeus. Again, it's not voluntary appreciation club of Apollo. These people took these rites seriously. This was a big part of their worldview, of their everyday life. That's just absurd. No, that's bullshit. They took spiritual leaders seriously. What was the other one? That there's nothing approaching taboos in in native faith. That's bullshit as well. Blasphemy is a word that comes to mind, and again, it's another term that carries a lot of baggage with it. That's a fair discussion to have. Is that the best term to use? That's why I'm substituting it with taboo. I think it approaches something more accurate. And there absolutely were taboos. Adultery was a pretty goddamn common taboo, right? I mean, and you see that that's connected with the other one. That there's no expectation of punishment in the afterlife for deeds done in this realm. Bullshit. Yes, there were. Yes, there absolutely were. Look at Niflheim or Niflhel. This is a region in hell in the Germanic tradition where adulterers or the female version of that, whores, were punished. A wolf would literally rend their flesh for their shameful deeds in this realm. Adultery is not the only one. Oath breakers, and the Germanics weren't the only ones to have this concept. That's pretty common among most Indo-European Hyperborean peoples. Hades is another example. Um, uh, taboos around, again, oath breaking, around sexual conduct, the 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 masculine and feminine spheres were, they're not just I mean, they're realities, spiritual and physical realities to our ancestors. For anyone to be acting in a sort of gender fluid gender fluid sort of way, this was like an intermediate realm between the two that was very suspect, and they wouldn't appreciate it. They would think it was there's some evil magic, uh, some foul spirit to it. It carried a sort of connotation that was taboo. Uh, heterosexual Heterosexuality was obviously the promoted norm. And it's just, I don't know, preaching to the choir, I guess. It should be pretty fucking obvious. To some people, it's not, though. Um, and and to claim that there weren't really these taboos. I mean, there's something morally suspect in that as well. And I've dealt with these sorts of parasites, and a lot of if you guys have been around for a while, a lot of our friend circle in this niche of the pagan community have dealt with these sorts of parasites. If you're claiming that there weren't these moral taboos in our pre-Christian societies, in our ancestral pre-Christian societies, there's some fuckery afoot, to be honest. What you're saying is that accountability wasn't important. There wouldn't be any punishments for sort of any sort of deviancy. That's obviously false. That's just not true. Like I gave with the example of the line between masculine and feminine. There's obviously some go between, but there's no there's there's nothing you could do if you're just kind of mixing and matching, and uh, that would draw attention. And I guess I bring that up because I remember this one example from one of these parasites and sophists, where he was claiming um, furries were an expression of our Hyperborean biospirit that was just mutated and run amok. That modernity had brought out this negative side of furrydom, but that it was actually part of our biospirit. That's the kind of thinking, that's the kind of allowances that you can make if you're going to claim, if you're going to imagine in this pagan fan club, if you're going to imagine that there were no taboos, oh, anything goes now, right? Furries. I mean, it's just, it's like this smooth brain sort of thinking. When when our ancestors, this is common to the Menabunda, the the wolf pack. It wasn't just the Nordics who did a lot of this. It wasn't just the Ulfith Nars and the Berserkers. Uh, this was pretty common practice. These raiding parties and finding spiritual significance with totem animals, often the wolf, the Dacians, but not always. There's the boar, the bear, um, the horse. Many of these totem animals. When you're taking on the animal aspect in these rituals, you're not trying to convince yourself that you're not a man. You're taking on the spirit, the vitality, the strength, the ferocity, whatever it may be of this significant animal as a man. They're not confused about their identity. They're not tromping around in in ritual gear all the time. At least for the most part. I mean, most people, and even there's an exception here, but this is important. Those who do stay in after the initiation, the Menabunda, after your successful raids, after you've proved yourself as a young man, as a hunter and a warrior, you're invited to come into based on your success or your lack of success. You're either invited to come in or you're banished, or even outright killed. These are the accounts that we have based on the archaeological and other evidence that we have of this our ancestral traditions. And those who decided to stay on the warpath, as it were, it was acknowledged, right, as a part of society that they were on the outside. They were not on the inner circle. They were operating on the outside. If you decided to remain, the hunter with the bestial aspect, you were on the outside. You were. I hope I'm making myself clear. Like that was a different thing. There was a cultural context to that, and a religious context to it. These people went through rituals. There was training. They were expected to have knowledge of the ancestors and the gods, and there were specific rites that they had to live up to, and trials that they had to overcome. It was particular to every different culture. Romulus and Remus is an example of this wolf raider Menabunda in the Italic context. There were the Dacians, the Balts, the Lithuanian. Did some research on the etymology of Litve. I'm not pronouncing that right. Excuse me, but you trace the etymology back, and a lot of the Balts had a wolf initiation cult as well, and many of these rules and rituals were common to them with their own cultural accents and expectations. But that was pretty common, and it was understood. If you did not choose to come back in to the tribal circle, you were operating on the outside. Now there's still a function, you still serve a cultural function. Anyways, my whole point with that was that there's important context to this, to where you can't just pull shit out of your ass and just say no, there weren't these strict taboos and well, if you really look at it, then furries were I mean, these are the kinds of arguments that make us a joke. This is why I don't like this stupid pagan fan club. Because and there are a lot of really unfair bad faith criticisms that many trad cats or whatever other Christians make, and that's one thing. But there are genuine good criticisms that people need to hear, need to pay attention to, and when they come along and they see this kind of fan club, not really serious sort of shit, they have a right to point at that and say, what's authentic here? What are you actually worshiping? Why do white folk need this? That is a fair criticism. And you assholes who do this, you fan club fanboys and cheats who do this, you make us a laughingstock. You make it harder for ancestral folk faith to return. So what mattered? What really mattered to the ancestors? The difference between honor and shame, accountability, hierarchy. Hierarchy absolutely mattered. And ritual. Ritual absolutely mattered. Making proper offerings and performing these things in the way that it was set out, time immemorial. Those things really mattered. You don't get to just make shit up and just run along with it. So those were my frustrations. I could think of more things. And again, I'm not trying to be a taskmaster. It takes time to get back into a tradition that's been lost for a long time. Not fully lost. Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious, and many others have commented how folk faith comes up of its own accord, and it is expressed in naturally, no matter how hard you try to shove it under, try to suppress it. There is a personal journey here. I guess I'll put it that way. And it takes time to be able to find your path to ethnic faith. I'll put it that way. And so I'm not trying to be impatient for people who are taking time and researching, and because I'm, again, like I said, I hope I said, I'm dissatisfied with myself as well for not taking it entirely seriously at times. There are things I could be doing to improve my practice and to strengthen the connection with the divine and the primordial. We all make inroads on this, as I've been making, and a part of that has been a lot of the research that I've been doing. I've been studying the Iliad and the Kalevala. I'd like to get into some of the sagas. I'd really like to get my hands on the Las Plessis, Plessis. I don't know, not sure of the pronunciation. Latvian epic poem. Some of the Baltic stuff. I'd really like to get into that. So I'm making inroads. And I'm just getting more and more frustrated with the sort of fan club, lackadaisical, anachronistic bullshit. Because it's not satisfying. And again, like I said, when people come around, it doesn't just have to be Christians. when people come around and make and point and laugh at people trying to or claiming people claiming that they care about folk faith and heathenry, and then they see this this lazy shit, this low effort LARPing, they have a right to laugh at it at that. And we deserve it. If that's the low base level that we settle for, then we deserve to be laughed at. So are we going to take ethnic faith seriously or not? And that's a good question. That's another good question. And there are challenges with that. So I'd like to leave you with something along those lines that I've been doing. Certain particular practices that I've been doing based on historical precedents, trying to bring folk faith back explicitly, not just implicitly, although the implicit is important as well. But one of these things that I'll do, speaking about the difficulty of all this, of trying to get back to base, it's hard to know where to start. You have to start with the level that you're at. So one of these things that I'll do is I have a huge appreciation, as a lot of folk in our sphere do, for history, for ancient, not just ancient, but recent and older architecture, the relics of our ancestors, you could say. So I'll go to many historical sites, pay my respects there. That's one simple thing that I do. There's a great example of that. I'd like to get this video out at some point. I haven't been able to for technical reasons, but I'll figure that out someday. But I go to a Western Heritage Center, a bit of a museum and a historical ranch that they have set up there. Awesome place. Lots of relics from the past. Everything from black powder muskets to everyday cooking utensils. People have stored and taken care of at this historical site. A lot of traditional livestock and ranching techniques, farming techniques that they have preserved, and they do all sorts of exhibitions and cool community type stuff where they'll invite the family to come out and have petting zoos. A lot of wholesome, good fun. And in that town, there is, in the main square, a totem that a couple people in the valley, it was like 10 years ago or something, carved a replica, an artistic interpretation of a mountain man out of a great log. And I love this totem to death. I think that goes to what I was saying before, an implicit example of folk faith. Just this simple appreciation of the trailblazers who settled the valley first. The mountain men came to this part of the nation and set up caches here. They stored their pelts and their animal skins in caches, and that's where our valley gets its name from, Cache Valley. And so this is a folkish nod of appreciation and a salute to those men who those they preceded the pioneers a couple decades, um, but those pioneering sort of men, trailblazers, and I'll pay my respects at this site. That's in connection to our ancestry. That's in connection to our biospirit, uh, and it's just something simple that I do to try to keep folk faith alive and try to ground it in this new garden of Europe, as me and a couple friends discussed a couple months back on Southern Nordics channel. So those are some of the simple things that we can do. Because it's not always easy. And again, I'm not the taskmaster, right? I'm not rapping your knuckles. I'm frustrated with a lot of this fake, anachronistic sophistry that's run amok in certain areas of the pagan sphere. And that shit deserves to be mocked and laughed at. And anyone who does, I don't blame them. So for those of us who care about folk faith and heathenry, let's take that more seriously. With the acknowledgement that we have to start from where we're at and be practical with these things. I think that's pretty practical. I think that's pretty grounded. I think that has uh, historical precedence. I mean, paying your respects at totems and monuments and things like that. Right? That's part of what an idol of the gods would represent. It's a memorial of these great beings who smile and and bless us. Depending on our honorable deeds and whether or not we keep our oaths. But that was some of my critiques, my observations, some of my concerns, and some of my suggestions. So hope you find this valuable, and take care.